There is a small underground studio in Tokyo. No windows, fluorescent lights, a bare wooden floor, and one woman standing alone, watching a door. Her name is Akane. She built Avantgardey, and what she is waiting for, even now, years later, still surprises her. The door opens. They enter in single file. 17 women. Same hair, same dress, same expression, same step. Like links in a chain that had always been connected. Akane watches, and she says, it was a new kind of living thing. Here's what most people don't know. Akane didn't design the uniform to create this effect. She chose it because it suited the seagull wing movements of the very first song she ever made for the group. A practical decision. She tried it, and it turned out to be, in her words, surprisingly interesting. An accident. The thing that would stop audiences in 40 countries. Discovered, not designed.
But those 17 women, Nona, who teaches children, Pani, who loves spicy food, Mocha, Seira, Fuka, each one specific, each one off stage, entirely herself. So what happens when the uniform goes on? Where did they go? Because at some point in your life, on a team, in a family, in a crowd, in something you cared about, you have felt something like this. Being yourself and something larger at the same time. Like your edges softened. Like you were more than you, and somehow more you than usual. In the next 20 minutes, we are going to follow that question. Not just what happens to the people on that stage, but what it reveals about something every person carries. The tension between being yourself and being part of something larger. And why that tension might not be a problem to solve.
Watch them for 30 seconds. Just watch. The precision isn't only impressive, it becomes something harder to name, slightly unnerving. A journalist who spent time with them up close described the feeling as watching freshly wound wind-up dolls. Not robotic, not disturbing, but uncanny, familiar and wrong at the same time. And then, between movements, they reset, back to stillness, back to exactly the same, and the next sequence begins. And yet you can't look away. Here's what most of us assume when we see this. Something has been erased. The individuals have been absorbed. When people look the same, dress the same, move the same, wear the same face, we assume they become the same. It's a deep discomfort, one we've learned from history. Uniforms have been used to erase people, to make them disappear into a role, a rank, a system. But the members of Avantgardey say something that doesn't fit this assumption. They say, we want to express individuality within uniformity. By having the same hairstyle and outfit, each person's inner charm stands out even more. Not instead of, within.
But if they all look the same, how do I know which one is which?
That's the question. That's exactly where we start. In 1971, a psychologist named Philip Zimbardo ran an experiment at Stanford University. He gave ordinary people uniforms. He gave them roles. And he watched what happened. Almost immediately, individual self-awareness began to loosen. People started behaving differently. Not because anyone told them to change who they were, because the uniform sent a signal to the brain. You are something different now. Zimbardo called this de-individuation, the loosening of individual identity within a group. When the markers of self are removed, the self steps back. Not slowly, almost immediately. But here is what Zimbardo's experiment didn't ask. What if the self that steps back isn't the whole self? What if it's only one specific part? The defended part, the self-conscious part, the part that is always watching how it appears to others, the part that manages, adjusts, and performs, the part that is always asking, quietly in the background, how am I doing? Is this right? Do they see me? What if taking off the individual markers doesn't erase the person, it just removes the performance? And what's left, when the performance stops, might be something more interesting than what was there before.
There's something that happens to the brain in peak performance. Not at the beginning, not when the movement is still being learned, but later, much later, when the skill has been practiced until it lives in the body, when the body knows what to do before the mind has formed the thought. Something quiets. The part of the brain that runs the internal commentary track, the prefrontal cortex, reduces its activity, temporarily, not gone, just out of the way. The voice that asks, "How am I doing?" goes quiet. The watcher steps back. Psychologists call this transient hypofrontality. The experience from the inside, time distorts, effort disappears. The gap between what you intend and what you do closes, until there is no gap. What reduces is not the person, it's the self-consciousness.
In the 17th century, a Japanese swordsman named Takuan Soho wrote a letter to a master about exactly this state. Not about dance, about the sword, which in that time meant about life and death. He called it Mushin, no mind, not emptiness, something more precise than that. He wrote, "The no mind neither congeals nor fixes itself in one place. Where there is no stopping place, it is called no mind. The mind that stops on any thought, any doubt, any self-awareness is interrupted, and the interrupted mind was the mind defeated. The mind that flowed continuously was the mind of mastery." 500 years later, a neuroscientist, brain imaging data, different language, same description. Before we go further, there's something worth sitting with. Before the science, before the philosophy, every person who has ever been fully absorbed in something they love has touched this. Maybe it was playing an instrument, the moment your hands moved before you told them to. Maybe it was running, when effort stopped feeling like effort. Maybe it was a conversation so real, so present, that you forgot to think about what you looked like having it. That moment, right at the edge of that feeling, is what we're describing.
The members of Avantgardey describe their training this way. They say they practice timing so precisely, sometimes even practicing while feeling each other's breathing. Not a metaphor. That is what this kind of training looks like from the inside. The body learning to act below the level of thought. The choreography internalized until it isn't choreography anymore, until it's just motion. Continuous, uninterrupted motion. The samurai called it Mushin. Avantgardey calls it choreography. The result is the same. What disappears in that state isn't the dancer. It's the watcher. And without the watcher, without the part that monitors and worries, something else can come through. But here's where it gets stranger. What I just described, one person entering that state, is only half the phenomenon. What happens when 17 people enter it simultaneously is something different, something that researchers only recently found a way to measure.
One person entering that state is remarkable, but it's not the full picture. What happens when 17 people enter it together, after thousands of hours of practice until they can feel each other's breathing, is something researchers only recently had the tools to see. Individual flow is documented, studied, understood. Group flow is something different. Not 17 people flowing at the same time, something more connected than that. Researchers put EEG sensors on multiple people at once, all wearing them at the same time. And when a group entered genuine team flow, something specific appeared, a brain state distinct from individual flow. The brains began to process together, not in parallel, in coordination. And it's not only the brain. In groups that reach genuine team flow, heart rates begin to track each other. The rhythm of one body starts to follow the rhythm of another. Bodies, not just minds, becoming one system. Scientists who study jazz musicians and dance companies describe it this way. It is as if all the members are breathing together, listening together, tuned to the same frequency, feeling each other in a very deep way. Members begin to predict what the others will do before they do it, not through signals, not through watching, through something that lives below words.
Researchers who study group flow have identified the conditions that make it possible. Several matter, but the last one, and the most important, is something they call ego blending. The individual steps aside for the collective, not ego erasure, not the person disappearing. The watcher in each person steps back, just as it does in individual flow. But now, 17 watchers step back at the same time. What remains isn't 17 performers, it's one thing. The thing Akane saw in that rehearsal room, the thing she called a new kind of living thing. And when that happens, something unexpected occurs with the uniform. It removes the performance of being distinct, so a deeper distinctiveness can emerge. The specific quality of one member's gaze, the slight half beat where one face shifts before the others. These become more visible, not less, when everything around them quiets. Humans carry two needs inside them, always. The need to belong, and the need to be seen as themselves. Groups that satisfy both at the same moment, belonging and being irreplaceable, create something rare. Avantgardey does this. You are exactly like everyone else, and you are irreplaceable. 17 watchers stepped back. 17 performers stepped forward, and the group became something that none of the 17 could be alone.
In the 7th century, a Japanese prince named Shotoku wrote what historians consider Japan's first real constitution. Not a list of laws, a single guiding principle. Harmony shall be the premier value. The Japanese word is wa, and what matters, what gets lost in translation, is this. Wa does not mean uniformity. Wa is the harmony that comes from different things flowing together, not different things becoming the same thing. The harmony of a river is not the harmony of a single note held forever. It's many currents, each following its own nature, arriving at the same direction. In Japan, there's a distinction between two kinds of self. Hane, your true inner feelings, the private you, and tatemae, the face you offer to the collective, the shape you take in the presence of others. Western observers sometimes read tatemae as performance, as wearing a mask. But in the Wa framework, tatemae is something different. It's a contribution. You bring your hane, your real self, and the tatemae you show is your gift to the collective that holds you.
Avantgardey's uniform is tatemae, the specific weight of how each body moves, the particular quality of each person's attention, the slight half beat where one face shifts before the others. That's honey. Both real, both necessary, neither one the whole. Now, on the other side of the world, roughly the same time, a man commanding the largest empire on earth was writing private notes he never intended anyone to read. Marcus Aurelius. He wrote about bees. What injures the hive injures the bee. But he also wrote the other direction. What is rational in different beings is related, like the limbs of a single body meant to function as a unit. The point wasn't only a warning, it was also an affirmation. What benefits the hive benefits the bee. The individual is not diminished by belonging to something larger. The individual is completed by it. The Stoics had a name for this, sympatheia. Not sympathy in the way we usually mean it, the understanding that all things are threaded together. What affects one thread affects the whole fabric.
Not a mystical idea, a practical one. The only reasonable response to shared existence is cooperation. Two civilizations, an island in the Pacific, an empire spanning 3 continents, centuries apart, oceans apart, the same answer. Found separately, an ocean apart. The individual is most fully themselves when most genuinely part of the whole, not despite it, through it. Avantgardey didn't invent this tension, they inherited it. And every time they put on the uniform and step into formation, they are practicing something the human species has known for a very long time.
Here is what we've found. When the uniform goes on and the formation begins, the self that softens is a specific one, the watching self. The part that monitors how it looks, manages what others think, checks whether it's doing well. That part gets quieter. And what disappears is not the person, just the watcher.
Both and. It's the hive benefits every bee in it. Marcus Aurelius wrote the warning first. What injures the hive injures the bee. But he also wrote the other direction. What is right in different beings is meant to work as one. The individual is not made less by genuine belonging. The individual is completed by it. And here's something worth noting. The person who returns from a performance is not exactly the person who entered it. Something was found in the space between selves. Something was brought back. We'll come back to this. There's something researchers in economics have noticed about groups. When people give up doing things in their own best way, when they choose the group's way instead, something appears that wasn't there before. A kind of value that doesn't live inside any one of them. It lives between them. Avantgardey is a living proof of this. What 17 dancers create, having practiced until their nervous systems speak to each other below the level of thought, until they can feel each other breathing. What that creates is not found in any one of them. The surplus is between them. They didn't hide their identity. They set it down, temporarily, the way you set down a bag when you need your hands free to climb. You pick it up again at the bottom. But while you're climbing, something is possible that wasn't possible before. And this isn't only about dance. Every time you've been part of something, really part of something, a team that caught fire, a moment of shared joy, a conversation where both people forgot themselves and found the thing they were actually looking for, you felt it. The self most fully itself is often the self most genuinely given to what it's doing, not because the self disappears, because it stops watching itself disappear.
There's that small underground studio in Tokyo. The door opens again. 17 women enter. Akane watches. She called it a new kind of living thing. And now, after all of this, I think I understand what she was seeing. Not the individuals disappearing, not the selves being erased, but something becoming possible between them that wasn't possible before the uniform,
before the formation, before 10,000 hours of practicing while feeling each other's breathing. Not loss, a different kind of emergence. She didn't design this, she discovered it. A costume chosen for a seagull song. A practical decision that turned out to be, in her words, surprisingly interesting. And the discovery, like most real discoveries, was a consequence of attention, not intention. Sometimes what we find by accident is the most true thing we could have found.
After every performance, the lights come down. The formation breaks. Nona is Nona again. Pani is Pani. 17 individual women filing out of a venue, into cars, into the rest of their lives. The uniform comes off. The temporary suspension ends. But they bring something back with them that they didn't have before the music started. Not a skill, a knowledge. The knowledge of what becomes possible when the watcher steps aside, when the self stops performing its own edges, when 17 nervous systems, having practiced until they feel each other's breathing, become, briefly, beautifully, one. This is a very old question, whether the individual and the collective are in conflict, and what the answer seems to be, from Tokyo to Rome, from the 7th century to the 21st, from neuroscience labs to martial arts studios, where the self has been learning to step aside for centuries, is, they never were. The individual is not made less by genuine belonging. The individual is often discovered by it. The question isn't where they go when they put on the uniform. The question is what they find when they get there, and what they bring back.